This is aisle 42. Welcome back to aisle 42. I'm glad you're here. The fact that you would take a few minutes out of your week to listen to these conversations about the future of food and the future of the grocery store, it warms my heart. I mean that. I really do. In this episode, I'm joined by Michael Lyons, CEO of SimplyProtein, a brand making waves in the better-for-you snacking space with their approachable, high-protein, plant-based products. With the rise of protein consumption trends, including the impact of GLP-1 medications and consumers seeking clean, functional foods, SimplyProtein is proving that better nutrition doesn't have to come at the cost of taste or accessibility. Michael and I chat through his team's dedication to organic food making, their B Corp certification, how they're connecting their mission to their brand, and even the unexpected success of their plant-based protein tortilla chips. Okay, let's get into it with Michael from SimplyProtein, because the future of food starts now. Michael, I don't think the timing could be better for this conversation, given that you're in the plant-based protein space and protein yet again is all the rage now across more categories than ever. But before we get into all of that, I want to say thank you for joining me on aisle 42. And I want to kick it off with the big question, and that is looking ahead to the future. What's the one change in the food system that would excite you the most?
First of all, thank you, Corwin, for having me. You've interviewed and met with a lot of my peers and some of my friends in the industry. I've always been a big fan. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and chat. Yeah, geez, that's a great first question right out of the gate. I would say there are two forces at play that always get me interested and excited about the industry. And I've been in food for a long time. And the first one is food is confusing. Like it's just confusing for the consumer, for the shopper to navigate, healthy, natural, organic, everything has to be high or has to be low in something. It's a kind of a complex thing. And there's no shortage of choice for consumers. And then the other trend so you've got that, think of that as almost a bit of a negative. The positive is I'm really fascinated by this trend around personal nutrition. And this isn't really to do with SimplyProtein or our company per se, but this sort of personalized nutrition thing, Nestle really kicked it off a number of years back in their research. And they really started understanding kind of at a DNA level, what is the right nutritional requirements for the individual, right? So what I get interested in is sort of how do those things come together? Because in theory, food shouldn't be confusing if you know exactly what your nutritional needs are as the individual, say, versus yourself, right? And we may have similar needs, but there's going to be some uniqueness. And I think retailers, I think brands who can figure out how to kind of curate that for people, I think can be really interesting. And so I'm not sure if that's the depth of the answer you're looking for, but certainly that's something that gets me excited.
I was hoping for pie charts and graphs, maybe some hand gestures.
Yeah. Once upon a time.
Maybe a laser pointer. That would have really ramped things up. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm shorted laser pointers and pie charts, but I'll tell you my thoughts anyway.
There you go. Well, listen, for those that aren't as familiar with your brand as I am, can you give the highlights on what it is that you guys make? And I always have to ask, what's your personal favorite?
We're in the kind of the better for you protein snacking space. We grew up initially as a bar, like a protein bar company. Our bars, some of what's a little bit different about us is, light, crispy texture. All our products are low sugar, all moderate levels of protein. We're not a high-end functional brand. We're an approachable kind of everyday protein brand. So we grew up in bars, but then we diversified, particularly more in the last 4 or 5 years. We have a ready-to-drink shake. We have some indulgent items. We have a kids product, like a kind of an all-family kids product, school safe, peanut, tree nut free. But the more exciting thing that we've been doing in the last year, Corwin, is we developed a plant-based pea protein tortilla chip. And that's really, really taken off for us. So, yeah, I mean, again, kind of think about it as mainstream, better for you protein snacking. And yeah, in a variety of different categories. And what's my favorite? And this is truly a coincidence, actually, but I have it here all the time. But I like our Hint to Lime tortilla chip. We developed this product, you've got to deliver on taste. Consumers aren't willing to compromise on taste, particularly in better for you mainstream. They don't want to compromise on taste. So we had to nail the taste. And, you'd be surprised there's even protein in this product. We get that all the time. Like, what? There's protein in this? I just want to dip it in guacamole and off I go. So that's something we're really proud of. And it's totally my favorite product.
So protein chips, and I know you would know the brand. There's a chicken meat chip out there. Is it called Wilder or
Yeah,
Wild?
yeah, it's called Wild. Yeah, I know yeah.
Yeah, I bumped into them in a hotel lobby in Anaheim there a few years ago. And it was the first time I had ever even heard of protein coming into a chip bag in any version. It had never even crossed my mind that it existed as a as a formulation, not to mention it being actually like meat, nonetheless. What I find interesting about what you guys done, I shouldn't have been surprised when saw that you guys came out with a protein tortilla chip. But what I love about your approach to it is that, and you kind of said approachable, accessible, like it's not a beat you over the head thing. It's very easy to eat. It doesn't feel weird. It feels like I'm enjoying a fantastic tasting chip. So good for you guys on the how's that launch gone? Because it's only been a few months.
Well, first of all, thanks for the compliments on the product. I will say, Corwin, in my entire career, I've never been involved in an innovation that's really, really come across like this, to be really honest about it. So thank you. I really appreciate it. When did we launch? We launched in May of last year. So we're actually coming up to our first year.
Oh my gosh, it's been that long already. Wow.
I
Okay.
know, yeah, but it feels like a hot minute, right? And the performance in Canada and the US has been well above expectations. So both for us and for our retail partners. And it's our number one rated product on Amazon now. It's our number two selling product on Amazon in the US and Canada. It's done really well. We're really proud of it. I just have this phenomenal team, which I'm sure we'll talk about culture and stuff later. But yeah, I have the easiest job. I just help support and resource them. So yeah,
Oh, that's very good boss man of you to say it that way. Uh,
there you go.
the chip aisle is got to be, I know there's a lot of really hyper competitive areas of the grocery store, but let's just call the moment and say the chip aisle is like the Thunderdome. It's Tina Turner's house when it comes to the grocery store. It's so competitive and there's so many unbelievably large players in that game. And one of the brands that our team works with, we've invested in Humble potato chips, so we know the chip aisle fairly well, and it's a dog eat dog place for facings and shelf space and all that jazz. When you guys looked at that category and said, "All right, let's go into tortilla chips, let's get into that aisle and let's do it," and the flavor lineup that you guys have is pretty exciting. Did you ever look at that and go, actually, hold on, like that looks too scary? Or was it always from an innovation standpoint, you're like, let's go close one eye, you know, turn the lights down a little bit and let's just go at it really hard?
Oh, we knew it all perfectly, Corwin. We knew exactly what to do.
Yeah, your
No,
nose got long there.
yeah, the nose got long. Yeah, it does remind me a little bit about the bread business. I spent 5 years in the bread business, and that is a direct to store delivery, and the chip aisle. Chips are the same. Frito, formidable brands, have a lot of control and influence day to day across the aisle. Here's what's different. There's two things that have changed now in that aisle, particularly in the last year or two, that make brands like Wild, brands like Simply Protein have an opportunity. The first one is retailers understand that protein's moving into mainstream. This is going all over virtually every category in the store. You can get a protein waffle now, right? Protein Eggo waffle. So they know and support and are testing and learning how to bring protein into mainstream, into the aisle. And the second thing is, if I look at one of our competitors, they've been in the OTC pharmacy section now, right, for a few years with a very successful protein chip. So they know protein's working in the category. So they're now carving out sections. We're talking to retailers in the US, large national retailers who have 4 8-foot sections now that are dedicated to brands like ours. So that's the trend that, avoided us having to close one eye and say, okay, well, let's hope this thing works. The retailers are looking for it. So that's what's a little bit different. Otherwise, you're absolutely bang on. I mean, it's cutthroat.
That's interesting. Yeah, I certainly see it at times, maybe with the organic play where they're carving out a little bit of space, maybe off to the side, maybe next to the bathroom or whatever. There's been the organic area, and that's growing and changing. I certainly see it in retailers like the like Real Canadian Superstore, where in my local store, there's now two very large, very generous aisles dedicated for better for you, organic and natural products, which is a wonderful trend. I hope it takes over the store one day to some degree, but
Yeah. And we'd be merchandised right in there. Actually, that's where we are, right in there. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, 100%. Yeah. But let's just take a moment on this protein thing. This GLP-1 Ozempic craze this is a mega trend driving some of this interest. I mean, it's not new, and it's certainly protein has always been around, and certain brands and certain things have guided that differently, but there's certainly a lot of extra push. From the consumer side, what should consumers be caring about when it comes to their protein consumption? And even more importantly, what kind of protein should consumers be focused on?
Yeah. What should they be caring about and what kind of protein? You're right. From a nutrition and diet perspective, there hasn't been a bigger trend in that space, I think, for sure, in my lifetime. And one of the challenges with GLP-1, of course, is, and this is fairly well researched and by companies much larger than ours, it's difficult to get enough protein in your diet. Look, I'm not an expert on, what is the precise grams of protein you should consume. I know what my targets are based on my health goals and fitness goals and things. But I do know in general, with the GLP-1 diet, it's difficult to get protein. So there's something I like about our products, to be a bit selfish for a second on this, is, digestibility and getting protein in is difficult on that diet at times from what we've understood. So light, crispy textures, things like protein chips, light, crispy, you're getting that protein boost, but it's also snacking and sort of that same behavior that you're used to. And I think that's really important. And there's a lot of products out there that can do that. But I think if you're on GLP-1, you've got to be focused on getting enough protein in your diet and, talking to your physician about what that protein level should be. And then the types of protein, that's a really good question. The thing I like about plant-based protein, from aside from just the sustainability side of it, is if you pick the right plant-based protein, you can get the 9 amino acids that you need in protein. And, our products have that. So even from a fitness and perspective and just from a health and bioavailability of protein, we have it. So plant-based delivers on that. I'm not against whey-based or, if you will, dairy-based proteins. I consume a bit of them myself, absolutely. But, there's lots of choices.
Yeah, and I feel like allergen-free eating is sort of it's been around. It's really had a lot of push. We're starting to see a little bit of a consumer pullback from the free from, because nowadays people are like, well, okay, we know what it's free from, but what is it? Like, you've promised me that it's not this and it's not that, but I need to know what it actually is made out of.
Yeah, the absence of negatives. You're right. We're moving out of kind of the, yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you there.
Yeah, yeah, sort
Sorry.
of. It's just this evolution of, careful consideration of what people are eating, what foods. Everyone's different, and some people there's just certain things that just their bodies don't absorb well, don't work with well, or they have a preference. Maybe it isn't physical, but it's another preference that they just want to have that excluded from their diet. But when you talk about plant-based protein, what ingredients are you using for that protein? Is soy the primary and only protein ingredient, or is there other things you guys are doing?
No, we do a lot in the pea protein space as well. The thing about soy, though, is still at least 75% of all plant-based protein globally is derived from soy. It's very protein efficient. You get the 9 branched chain amino acids. You get the bioavailability. So soy is a very efficient protein source. And if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to have that diet without soy in your diet. But we've branched out of just soy. So the protein chips that I talked about earlier are made from pea protein, grown right here in North America. Actually, our shakes that are 20 grams, they use pea. We use pea protein in that product as well. So it's a mixture. It's a mixture of both. Would be the sources.
Well, let's go back to your earlier comment about culture, and you're bang on. I do want to explore that a little bit because in the industry, I always hear the good, bad, and ugly of food companies and beverage companies and what they're doing and what they're not doing. And I always hear glowing reports of your group and what you've done. And a big piece of that
Really?
has
Oh,
to have
cool.
been, yeah, that's the
Huh.
rumor. That's the word on the street,
Yeah,
Michael.
it's
Um,
absolutely true, man. It's absolutely true.
I love it. Your B Corp certification is obviously something that, our team has gone through it. It is a blessing and a curse because it's a lot of work, but it creates a baseline for how you work with your suppliers and what that culture is. So I'm curious about the B Corp side. What has that meant to your team to go through that process and to now look ahead to maintaining and growing that certification as something that's important to your brand? What's the process been like for your team?
I was really hoping you were going to bring that up, actually, because in the years I've been lucky enough to manage this team, this is one of the proudest moments ever in the history of the company. When we went private again almost 5 years ago, we had set the company up and unintentionally, in a way, and it then organically became B Corp certified. And what I mean, we've been B Corp certified about a year and a half now. And Corwin, I can honestly say we didn't have one internal meeting to go through a checklist to say, okay, we're 80% of these things, but in order to be B Corp, we have to do the last 20% and change how we do governance or how we manage our team or our customers or innovation or sustainability, community mission. I can tell you, it's literally the proudest moment I have is we became B Corp certified organically in the business. And we scored 94.3. You have to be, as you know, your B Corp, you have to be 80 to be certified. And something I learned just recently that the average company in North America would be around 51. So we were just blown away. Like we had no idea that we were eligible to be B Corp certified, to be honest with you. And so what does it mean for the team and for the future? Well, number one is the sense of pride for the team and the sense of purpose and connectedness around our team's values as an individual, as a person, and with the company, huge. It really was a launch pad for our mission as well. We continue the governance. We do a lot with community around our mission. So it was a big jumping off point for us actually. Yeah, it was. It was amazing, man. Like honestly amazing.
That's so great to hear. Your brand, I think maybe it's because I'm, Canadian, looking south and looking in other places of the world that you guys would want to be in. What's it been like to bring your brand to retailers outside of Canada? What's that process been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. The categories are competitive, but they're competitive in Canada as well. The Canadian consumer, our home consumer, is super educated, really knowledgeable. The U.S. consumer is similar, just slightly different competitive mindset. And what we've learned going into the U.S., Corwin, is that we need to scream louder. We need to push harder. We need to create more awareness around the brand to break through in the US. It's a little more difficult, a little more expensive. We've even gone through some rebranding that we're launching later in the summer, not alienating our Canadian roots. I mean, I'm here in Canada, the management team, et cetera, but just make sure the packaging really breaks through for both markets in terms of appetite appeal, tonality, the kind of fun playfulness of the packaging. So it's been tough. But I will tell you, we got recognized in the summer. We got an award called the KeHE Care Trade Award, and KeHE's the largest natural food distributor in the U.S., as you know. And they pick 8 companies. I think it's every other year, and they have over 1,000. I think they have over 1,000 brands, and we got picked as one of the 8. And that was just based on our mission, B Corp, the work we do in community, things like our packaging, our products, plant based, et cetera. So we know we're in the right space. It's just, yeah, the US is a little tougher. So, and we don't sell products in any other market actually.
Oh,
So
okay. So you haven't.
We've dabbled a bit over the years, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like the tariffs or threat of tariffs or whatever, whatever is going on there, it's a bit of chaos inducing. So I know that, it starts to get everyone thinking elsewhere. But the reality is that, great retailers are down there. There's so many brands that, together you and I would know where they just, their relationships south of the border are just cherished, deeply cherished, and great people down there. So I hope it all works out and hope that you guys can continue to grow down there for sure.
Yeah, we will for sure. The tariffs are a complex issue. I sit on a CEO peer group. We just had a call this morning, and it's all some really admired, Canadian CEOs that I admire. And yeah, it's a big issue. But we've got a great team that can help navigate this and pivot. We're still a small enough Canadian company where we can be pretty agile. So I'm nervous about it, of course, but I'm confident we'll get through it. So how are you feeling about it? What are your thoughts?
I'm certainly concerned. I think it's gonna, my hope is that it's just saber rattling, and that, in fact, I had a number of conversations lately where people outside the food industry, they'll mention something, about aluminum or some other thing, and they're like, "Oh, it affects the food." I'm like, "Yeah, it's gonna affect food," and they didn't realize, and and especially when you start to see some of the double hit that some brands are going to hit when it gets to their ingredients or their supply chain or whatever, where it's going to get even worse. So, yeah, I hope it all kind of shakes out, but maybe that's, I don't know. Sometimes hope is an awkward reality.
Yeah, I think it will. I think inflation has been such a difficult thing for consumers to manage, and food prices, both north and south, have just it's been significant. So I think that's going to be a force at play that may influence decisions. That's my personal belief. I'm not a
Yeah,
politician or
yeah, no,
so.
but affordability is a huge issue across the board. So, yeah, it's
Huge.
got to get
Yeah.
tackled. For my final question, just want to, give a shout out to so many of the food entrepreneurs, food and beverage leaders, founders that listen to the show. And, given I was going through the other day, I was looking at your LinkedIn. I had never dug further, past the first page, but, your LinkedIn page goes for a while. You've been in CPG for a while. So when it comes to these entrepreneurs and founders that are looking to grow their mission led brands in competitive markets, what advice could you give? What's that one thing that stands out to you as when you're standing in front of a founder that you want them to hear?
Yeah, that's a great question. I learned this from a peer company. I won't say who it is because it's a longer conversation, but a company I really admire, and he was the head of sales there from when it was a really small company all the way to an extremely large company. And I asked him, I said, "What's the one thing that you could summarize as to define the success of your brand?" And he said, "Something we did from the beginning, like the day one, was we did the following. We connected, first, we defined a mission. Like, what is the mission? What is our why? Not just the vision, like the vision of the company and how we want to grow and win in whatever category, but the mission." He said, first define the mission, then connect the mission to the brand. These should be things that feel very interconnected. They're not compartmentalized. And he said the third thing is connect the products to the brand. Now that's easier, right? We have a brand that does this, and here's the products that we have. But this is something I've taken really seriously internally for us. And I look for it in, if I'm mentoring some entrepreneurs or they're mentoring me, I really look for conversations and founders that are connecting mission to brand, brand to products, and how they see those influencing. So if you're going to stand for community, what does it mean to your brand? It's not okay to stand for community and then you have a brand that's not purposeful with community. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a connectedness to those things, and we don't have it all perfect and right and everything, and I don't know if any brand does, but I believe philosophically you've got to be really invested in that. Otherwise, why are you doing it? And then also the consumer is just way too smart, and they'll figure you out. And maybe not in the first year or two, but they'll figure it out, and they'll just know it's not authentic.
Yeah. And some brands are sitting on, to be honest, a bit of a gold mine. I came across a brand that was like really generous with their donations, their philanthropy. It was very hidden. I kind of stumbled across it, and I'd known the brand for a long time and was surprised to learn that they were so caring and helpful to children's hospitals, for example. But no one would ever know. Now, maybe that's their prerogative. They just want to do that under the radar. But to be honest, consumers are looking for reasons to care. Consumers are looking for reasons to believe that someone has made something for them and that they have affinity there. And so I sort of look at that and go, man, like there's a disconnect there that, kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because people want to buy from brands they trust and that they feel like are genuinely caring of others around them. It's just part of our nature as humans. So yeah, it's when there's a disconnect there, it's a problem.
And it feels like you may have attended a couple of our meetings recently, because at Simply, we've one of the things we're critical of ourselves about is we don't talk about this enough. And when we got the KU Care Trade Award, we had to disclose all of it. But we donated 6.2% of our profit last year. We donate, including almost 1 million bars towards food insecurity. We've never posted that. It's not on our website. We're not doing anything. Like we're not talking about that. So this is where we're trying to take some of our own advice and say, okay, how do we connect that important mission work that we're doing to the brand and really give consumers an opportunity to get to know us beyond just a product, right? Get to know us around what we're doing with community and it's usually food, youth food insecurity, right? Like food for kids and food bank, all kinds of stuff we're doing in that area. We've just been really too modest about it.
Well, it's very Canadian of you, right?
Well, you know what? You're right. Our American colleagues are like, we should be talking about this now. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Actually, we should be.
To be honest, it's probably the blend of that brashness and the Canadian sensibilities that can say the way that might feel best suited for the brand is to not brag about it, but to celebrate it and to make sure it's not connected to a call to action for 10% off, right? Like, don't use it as a sales tactic.
Right.
Like, be thoughtful of it and let, at least in marketing, whether it's a content pillar or however you want to frame it, from a tactical perspective, but just you want it to be genuine. And I think sometimes you have to silo those things and, not attach it to an activation or some sales message, but let it let it kind of come out of the culture of the business as almost more as an employer or as a leader in this space, not so much as we really want you to buy our stuff.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And I loved your word around celebrate, and celebrate that. I think that's really great advice, actually. We should chat more about that
Let's do
sometime.
that.
Yeah.
But for now, we'll wrap it up. I'm so grateful for the time, Michael. I
Me too.
really appreciate your insights. Congrats for your team and all the work that they've done. Appreciate how you're making the grocery store a healthier, better for you place.
Yeah. Again, I'm really sincere and grateful for the opportunity, Corwin. I've watched on the sidelines for a long time, and you're really doing a lot of great work here in the space. So thank you for that. It's awesome to see.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Aisle 42. Please do yourself a favor and visit SimplyProtein.ca to learn all about the amazing products that they have and where to find them. And don't forget to follow them on social too. Okay, that's it for me. I'm Corwin Hebert from Ethical Food Group, and I'll see you in the future.